Welcome to Breadcrumbs. This is the prophetic journal of a girl who's more than happy to eat the crumbs off the master's table. If you're like me, then listen and be encouraged that even in the whispers and mere shadows, our God still speaks, and he has a lot to say. Jehu was the 10th king of Israel, a patchwork of glories and frailties. He was gone and gotten by Elisha. Probably didn't see it coming, but pretty soon he had oil being poured over his head, and just like that he was being declared a king. He must have been surprised because when Elisha showed up to anoint him, he turned to his men and he said, "What is this madman up to?" I find it extra amusing because a few verses later he's the one being described as a madman, and that's what got my attention. Jehu is anointed specifically to go and totally destroy the house of Baal, the evil, bloodthirsty god whose popularity was costing the lives of who knows how many children in bloody rituals. It says that Jehu saddled up horse and chariot and started to ride furiously towards the city. In 2 Kings 9, verse 20, it says this, "And the watchman reported, 'The driving, it's like that of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he drives furiously.'" So clearly, Jehu had a bit of a reputation for being a wild rider. It was that bit that really got me. Wild rider. A few years ago, when I finally understood what it meant to be prophetic, what it meant to have prophetic dreams, and that dreams were one of the things that have defined a lot of my life, I went back over my old journals, and when I was about 17 years old, scribbled across just a handful of lines was this dream. I was riding on the back of a white horse. I was behind a man and I was holding on tight, and we were riding so fast across the fields. We were jumping over walls that stretched out forever. A few years ago, when I was worshiping, I got a picture of myself on another white horse. Again, I was riding wild and furious, mane and hair flying, but this time there were a bunch of other people riding horses beside me, and all of us were riding behind him. We were riding on top of the water, maybe the sea, towards a city. It was glowing. Another moment took me totally by surprise. The second Frozen movie came out, and in it there's this scene where Elsa ends up with some kind of water horse, and there she is, riding wildly on top of the sea, hair and mane flying, and I just burst into tears. I was crying and crying because it felt so familiar. I found myself saying, "That's me." It's like it was a thing I had already lived or would live. It felt like destiny. Another time, while I was praying before I settled in for the night, I found myself in a vision of myself standing before an enormous white horse. It was a black and white vision. I don't usually have those. They're usually pretty colorful. But I think this served to showcase every muscle and sinew on this animal, because what was highlighted to me was the sheer power of this creature. I was made to run my hand slowly over it, feeling the power beneath my hands. I was being told to get familiar with the majesty and wildness of this animal, because I was going to soon be asked to ride it, and I would be riding it without a saddle. I would be riding it wildly and furiously, and did I trust him to get on and ride, because I would not be the one in control. I would not be the one steering the thing. Unlike Jehu, who held the reins of horse and chariot, I would be riding wildly and furiously, but submitted, totally submitted and trusting to the one who's really in the driver's seat. And just last week, while we were praying with our circle church, my daughter had a vision of me. She said she saw me on a horse, riding wild and free, hair undone and flying around, racing across the top of a cliff. Pure joy. I heard someone reference what they called a Jehu anointing the other day. They nicknamed it the wild anointing. They spoke of it being an anointing that is about racing towards the enemy, not away, fearlessly and furiously and wildly riding towards the enemy camp to tear down the strongholds, specifically of Jezebel and her witches, of dark powers that bind people up in chains, of perversity and sensuality. Am I one of the wild ones? And so I inquired of the Lord, and I said, show me. Does Jehu have anything to do with me? And there I was, on a white horse again, riding furiously towards darkness. Except unlike Jehu, instead of a sword that took off heads, my horse skidded to a halt, and from the deepest part of myself I screamed, "He loves you!" And from my chest flew out a handful of doves. And so back to that again. There is a kind of peace that the people of God are supposed to bring. Maybe I am called to be a kind of Jehu, wild and furious in my offerings of love. I will holler out to even the most fearful enemy, he has enough love for you. And nothing tears down strongholds quite like his love. If you want to interact with any of these episodes, if the Lord has spoken to you about similar things, then I really want to hear about it. This podcast has an Instagram account over at Mildly Prophetic. I'll put that in the show notes. If you hop over there, you can share the things you've seen and heard. You can ask me questions. Basically, you can add your breadcrumbs to mine. And if we gather them all up, then what a feast it'll be.